The fluorescent lights of the Veterans Affairs Hospital hummed with the kind of persistence that made broken men feel even more broken. Captain Cole Mitchell sat in a plastic chair that had cradled 1,000 wounded souls before him, his spine rigid despite the shrapnel that had been living near his L4 vertebra for 15 years. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and defeat. February rain pelted the windows of the Los Angeles facility. Outside, the city moved with the indifference of those who had never worn the uniform. Inside, time moved differently, slower, heavier. Cole was 52 years old. 28 of those years belonged to the United States Army. The arithmetic of his life was simple. More time in uniform than out. More nights in the field than in his own bed. More memories of diesel engines and gun oil than of his son's birthday parties. The door opened. Dr. Sarah Chen entered with a manila folder thick enough to contain a life's worth of damage. She was younger than Cole by a decade, but her eyes carried the particular exhaustion that came from treating men who had seen too much and said too little. She sat across from him. No preamble, no small talk. Veterans appreciated directness. Captain Mitchell, I've reviewed your file comprehensively. 3 documented panic attacks in the last 6 months. Chronic pain radiating from the shrapnel site. Sleep disturbances averaging 4 to 5 hours per night. Elevated cortisol levels consistent with persistent post-traumatic stress disorder. Cole said nothing. His jaw worked silently, grinding down words that wanted to escape. Dr. Chen continued, her voice gentle but firm. The Army Medical Board has completed their evaluation. Their recommendation is medical discharge with full disability benefits. Honorable, full pension. You've given enough, Captain. The word enough landed like incoming fire. Cole's hands, scarred and calloused from decades of handling steel and fire, tightened on the armrests. When he spoke, his voice was desert sand rough. 28 years, Doctor. I'm not done. Dr. Chen leaned forward, and for a moment the clinical mask slipped. Compassion, raw and real, flickered across her features. Cole, your body is telling you otherwise. Your mind is telling you otherwise. And there's something else we need to discuss. She paused, choosing her next words with surgical precision. When was the last time you spoke to your son? The question hit harder than any IED ever had. Cole's eyes, still sharp despite everything, fixed on a point somewhere beyond the wall. Beyond the hospital, beyond the rain-soaked city, back to a different time, a different version of himself. The flashback came unbidden, as they always did. Iraq, 2003. The heat that made men hallucinate. The dust that got into everything, including your soul. Cole's M1A2 Abrams. 70 tons of American armor, rolling through a Fallujah street that was too narrow and too quiet. Then the world exploding. The IED hit like the fist of God. The tank lurched, metal screaming. Smoke and fire and the terrible understanding that came in the space between heartbeats. Someone was hurt. Someone was dying. Sergeant David Ramos, 24 years old, father of twin girls he'd never seen because they were born while he was deployed. Gunner, friend, burning. Cole moved on instinct, his body knowing before his mind did. Out of the commander's hatch, down onto the hull. The heat was biblical. Ramos was trapped, the turret mechanism jammed, flames climbing his legs. Cole pulled. Ramos screamed. Something hot and sharp punched through Cole's lower back. Shrapnel from a secondary explosion. He didn't let go. Couldn't let go. He got Ramos out, dragged him clear, laid him on the street while medics ran toward them. Ramos looked up at Cole, his face ash pale, his hands reaching for something that wasn't there. "Tell my wife," Ramos whispered, blood on his lips. "Tell her I tried." Then nothing. Just the sound of Cole screaming for help that came too late. The flashback ended as it always did, abruptly, leaving Cole sweating in a temperature-controlled room, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Dr. Chen's voice brought him back. "Cole, you're here. You're safe." He blinked, nodded, wiped his palms on his khakis. "I know where I am." But did he? Sometimes the line between Iraq and Los Angeles, between 2003 and 2018, seemed thinner than paper. Dr. Chen's expression held no judgment, only understanding born from treating too many men just like him. "Your son, Cole, Jake, when did you last speak with him?" The second blow, softer, more devastating. Cole's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. 3 years, maybe more. Another memory. This one worse than combat because combat you could understand. This was the slow erosion of everything that should have mattered most. Hospital bedside. Not in Iraq. Stateside. Walter Reed. Cole recovering from the shrapnel removal surgery. Partially successful, they got most of it out, enough to keep him in the fight. His wife Jennifer sat beside the bed, her face carved from ice. Their son Jake, 8 years old and small for his age, stood behind her, his eyes red from crying. "I'm fine," Cole had told them. "I'll be back on duty in 6 weeks." Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Of course you will. You always go back." "It's my job, Jen." "Your job, right. And what about your job here, as a father? As a husband?" Cole had no answer, or rather he had the only answer he knew. The uniform, the mission, the men who depended on him. "I have to go back," he said. "My platoon needs me." Jennifer stood, took Jake's hand. "And we don't?" She left, took Jake with her. Cole watched them go, telling himself it was temporary, that she'd understand, that there would be time later to fix things. There wasn't. The divorce papers came 18 months later. Joint custody became supervised visits, became Jake refusing to see him at all. The boy grew into a man, joined the army himself, infantry, not armor, a silent rejection of everything his father represented. And Cole kept serving, because that was what he knew. That was who he was, until his body and mind both said enough. Sitting in Dr. Chen's office, the weight of those choices pressed down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. 3 years, he repeated, maybe more. Dr. Chen closed the folder. "Captain, you're at a crossroads. The Army is offering you an honorable exit, full benefits, a chance to heal physically and mentally, a chance to rebuild what you've lost. And if I'm not ready to exit, then you're fighting a war you can't win, and I think you know that." The silence stretched. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against glass. Cole's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a number he recognized. Fort Irwin, California. Colonel Marcus Hendricks. He looked at Dr. Chen. "I need to take this." She nodded, rising. "Think about what I said, Cole. Sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is stand down." She left him alone with the call. Cole answered. "Hendricks." The voice on the other end was gravel and smoke, aged whiskey and old battles. Marcus Hendricks, 58, a man who'd commanded tanks when Cole was a lieutenant. Mentor, father figure, the closest thing to family Cole had left in uniform. "Cole, how'd the eval go?" "Medical board wants me out. Full discharge." A pause, then a sound that might have been a sigh. "Probably right, you stubborn bastard. But I've got something for you before you go. One more mission. Could be your redemption." Cole straightened despite himself. "I'm listening." "Pentagon needs an evaluation. New armored fighting vehicle. 8x8 wheeled platform. Joint venture, US and Kazakhstan, called the Barys, snow leopard in their language." "Wheeled platform?" Cole's skepticism bled through. "We've got strikers for that. What makes this one special?" "It's been tested in -60 Celsius and +55. Carries a 57mm cannon in a remote turret. Mine protection that makes a striker look like tissue paper. And it needs someone who knows armor, knows combat, and doesn't have a political axe to grind." "So you thought of me. You're about to retire. You've got nothing to lose and everything to prove. And Cole, you're honest to a fault. That's what we need, not a salesman, an evaluator who'll tell the truth even if it kills the program." Cole processed this. A wheeled AFV, foreign partnership, high-stakes evaluation. "Where's the testing?" "Fort Irwin, where you started, where it all began." Something in Cole's chest tightened. Fort Irwin, the Mojave Desert, the national training center where he'd learned to command armor 3 decades ago. Full circle. "When?" "Report Monday. That's 4 days. I'll have your orders cut. Cole, do this right, and I'll personally fight your medical discharge. Get you another 2 years to proper retirement on your terms." There it was, the hook. Not just a mission, a lifeline. "What's the catch, Marcus?" Hendricks' laugh was dry. "The catch is, I've assigned your son to the evaluation team. Security detail. He doesn't know you're coming." The world tilted. "Marcus, no, he won't." "Won't what?" "Talk to you? Work with you? Cole, you've got 3 months to fix what's broken. Not just with the vehicle, with your family. Consider it a direct order from a friend who gives a damn." The line went dead. Cole sat alone in the waiting room, phone in hand, rain hammering the windows. 28 years of service. 3 years of silence from his only son. One last mission that might be his last chance. He stood, ignoring the flare of pain in his lower back, and walked out into the rain. The drive from Los Angeles to Fort Irwin took 4 hours through desert that shifted from urban sprawl to endless nothing. Cole made the trip in his truck, a 10-year-old Ford that rattled but ran, much like its owner. He arrived at dusk when the Mojave turned from furnace to freezer in the space of an hour. The main gate looked exactly as it had when he was a 22-year-old lieutenant, all fresh-faced confidence and certainty. That version of himself seemed like a stranger now. The MP checked his credentials, waved him through. Cole drove to the visiting officers' quarters, a low-slung building that smelled of industrial cleaner and transients. He unpacked mechanically. Uniform, boots, the few personal items that mattered. A photo, creased and faded, of him and Jake at Disneyland when the boy was 6, before Iraq, before everything broke. A knock at the door. Colonel Marcus Hendricks stood in the threshold, 60 inches of weathered leather and hard-earned wisdom. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp beneath gray brows. "Cole, you look like hell." "Good to see you too, Marcus." They embraced briefly, the way old soldiers do, all backs slapping and unspoken understanding. Hendricks entered, closed the door, and got straight to it. "Briefings tomorrow at 0800. You'll meet the evaluation team and the engineer from Kazakhstan Paramount. Woman named Dr. Elena Volkov. Sharp. Knows her systems. Lost her husband 3 years back in a training accident. American officer, actually. He was advising their program when a prototype IFV had a catastrophic failure. Cole absorbed this. A widow, building vehicles to save lives. There was poetry in that, tragic and beautiful. "The vehicle's already here," Hendricks continued. "Barys 8x8. They drove it from the port in San Diego. Crew compartment holds 11. Remote turret system with a 57mm autocannon. The Ruskies call it the AU-220M. Fire control suite is state-of-the-art. Mine protection rated to STANAG 4569 Level 4B. Technical specifications. Cole's native language. What's the concern? Why the deep evaluation?" Hendricks sat heavily in the room's single chair. "Politics, money, fear, take your pick. Some in the Pentagon think we're too cozy with Kazakhstan, especially given their relationship with Russia and China. Others worry about tech transfer. Then there's the defense contractors who want to protect striker contracts. This evaluation is a minefield, Cole, technical and political. And you want me to walk through it? I want you to tell the truth. Test the vehicle. Push it hard. If it's good, say so. If it's garbage, say that too. But do it honestly." Cole nodded slowly. "And Jake?" Hendricks' expression softened, just a fraction. "He's assigned to security for the test area. Standard duty. He requested Fort Irwin 6 months ago. I don't think he knew you'd be here. Hell, I didn't know until last week when they asked me to recommend an evaluator. He won't want to see me. Probably not. But he needs to. And so do you. Cole, you're a great tanker. Always have been, but you've been a lousy father. This is your chance to fix that." The words stung because they were true. What if I can't? What if I fail the eval? What if I freeze up like I did at the VA? Hendricks stood, placed a hand on Cole's shoulder. "Then you go out trying. That's all any of us can do. But I've known you 25 years, Cole Mitchell. You don't quit. Not on missions. Time to stop quitting on yourself." He left, and Cole was alone with the ghosts of his choices. Morning came cold and bright, the way desert mornings do. Cole dressed in his ACUs, the digital pattern a second skin after so many years. He looked in the mirror and saw a man who'd aged faster than his years, lines carved deep by sand and stress and regret. The briefing room was in the test facility headquarters, a concrete building that prioritized function over form. Cole entered to find a conference table surrounded by faces both familiar and foreign. Colonel Hendricks stood at the head. "Take a seat, Captain. Let me introduce the team." First was a woman in her late 40s, her posture ramrod straight, her eyes carrying the weight of command. Sergeant Major Teresa Rourke. The name clicked. Cole had trained her 2 decades ago when she was a fresh-faced specialist with more fire than sense. "Tess, heard you made Sergeant Major. Congratulations." Her smile was warm but measured. "Captain Mitchell, it's been a long time. Good to have you back." Next was a younger man, mid-30s, African-American with the lean build of someone who never stopped moving. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, gunner, Detroit native, eyes that assessed and calculated constantly. "Sir, looking forward to working with you." Then a woman barely into her 20s, Latina, with grease under her fingernails and fire in her eyes. Specialist Daniela Orozco, driver from somewhere in Texas near the border. "Captain, they tell me you're old school tanker. I'm new school. Should be interesting." Cole almost smiled, almost. And finally, a woman who stood apart from the military members. Mid-40s, slender, with dark hair pulled back severely, and eyes that had seen loss up close. Dr. Elena Volkov. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. Captain Mitchell, I am Elena Volkov, Chief Engineer for Kazakhstan Paramount on the Barys project. I look forward to working with you. Her accent was slight, Eastern European, but softened by time in English-speaking environments. Her eyes met his without flinching. Doctor, I understand you've put a lot of work into this vehicle. My team and I have dedicated 3 years. This vehicle is more than machinery to us. It represents lives saved, crews protected, families kept whole. The intensity in her voice was unmistakable. Cole recognized it, the same intensity he'd carried for 28 years. Hendricks cleared his throat. Now that introductions are done, let's discuss the evaluation protocol. Captain Mitchell will design and execute a comprehensive test program over the next 12 weeks. The Barys will be assessed across all operational categories: mobility, lethality, survivability, crew endurance, maintainability. We'll compare performance against our existing Striker platforms where relevant. He pulled up a slide showing the Barys 8x8. The vehicle was sleek in an aggressive way, its 8 wheels giving it an almost insect-like appearance. The turret was unmanned, a bubble of sensors and steel perched atop the hull. The Barys was designed for extreme environments, Elena explained, stepping forward. From Siberian winter to Central Asian summer. It has operated in -60 Celsius in Kazakhstan and +55 in our desert proving grounds. The vehicle you will test has been winterized but adapted for your climate requirements. Cole studied the image. Wheeled vehicles always made him nervous, too light, too vulnerable, but he kept his skepticism in check. What's the crew capacity? 11 total. Commander driver, 2 turret operators remotely from interior, and 7 infantry dismounts. The AU-220M turret is operated via internal stations. No crew exposure. Power plant? Turbo diesel, 550 horsepower, fully automatic transmission, range of 800 kilometers on internal fuel. Mine protection? Stenag 4569 level 4A and 4B, V-shaped hull, blast-resistant seats. We have tested with 10-kilogram TNT equivalent charges. Crew survival rate 100% in trials. Impressive numbers on paper. Cole asked the question that mattered. Dr. Volkov, have you lost anyone testing this vehicle? The room went silent. Elena's expression flickered just for a moment. Yes, 3 years ago. The prototype. My husband was evaluating systems when a hydraulic failure caused catastrophic turret malfunction. Captain Ryan Patterson, United States Army, advisor to our program. He died helping us make Barys safer. The raw honesty hit like a gut punch. No corporate spin, no evasion, just truth. I'm sorry for your loss, Cole said quietly. I designed this vehicle so no other wife loses husband the way I did. So I ask you, Captain Mitchell, to evaluate honestly. If Barys is flawed, tell us. If it is worthy, tell Pentagon, but judge on merit, not prejudice. Their eyes locked. 2 people who'd both lost too much to war and machinery. An understanding passed between them, wordless and complete. Hendricks broke the moment. First field test is scheduled for tomorrow. Captain Mitchell will observe initial mobility trials. Tess, you'll be acting commander. Webb, gunnery, Orozco, driver. Dr. Volkov will provide technical support from the observation vehicle. Questions? None came. Dismissed. Captain, a word. The others filed out. Hendricks waited until the room cleared. Your son is outside. He just came on duty. He doesn't know you're here yet. I figured you'd want to. No, not yet. Let me see how he reacts. Hendricks nodded and left Cole alone with his thoughts and his fear. Cole stepped outside into the bright Mojave morning. The test facility yard was organized chaos, vehicles and equipment staged in precise rows. And there, standing post near the security checkpoint, was a figure Cole would have recognized in any crowd, any country, any lifetime. Jake Mitchell Jr., 28 years old, 6 feet of lean muscle and quiet intensity. Infantry tab on his shoulder, Ranger scroll, combat deployment patch from Afghanistan. Everything Cole had been at that age, but harder somehow, more distant. Cole walked toward him, each step feeling like crossing a minefield. Jake saw him coming. His body language shifted, shoulders squaring, jaw setting. Recognition and something else. Something that looked like anger mixed with pain. Cole stopped 3 feet away. Jake, Captain Mitchell. The formality was a knife. You're assigned here? Security detail, 12-week rotation, standard duty. Jake's eyes were cold. I didn't know you'd be here. Colonel Hendricks assigned me to evaluate a new AFV. I'm lead assessor. Of course you are. Always another vehicle, another mission. The bitterness was corrosive. Cole tried again. Son, I know we haven't talked in a while, but maybe this is a chance to… To what? Reconnect? Play catch-up? Sir, with respect, I'm here to do my job. You're here to do yours. Let's keep it professional. Jake's hand moved to his rifle sling, a gesture that spoke of discomfort and the need for something familiar to hold on to. Cole felt the words he wanted to say pile up behind his teeth. Apologies, explanations, justifications. None of them made it out. Understood, Sergeant Mitchell. Carry on. Jake's expression flickered, something that might have been disappointment, before hardening again. Yes, sir. He turned away, back to his post, and Cole stood there feeling like he'd just failed another critical mission. Specialist Orozco had witnessed the exchange from 20 meters away. She approached carefully, the way you approach wounded animals. That your kid, sir? Cole nodded, not trusting his voice. Looks like there's some history. 3 years worth of silence, maybe more. Danny considered this, then spoke with the bluntness of someone too young to know better or too honest to care. My dad and I didn't talk for 5 years. He wanted me to stay home, work the family garage, maybe get married, pop out grandkids. I wanted to serve, wanted to see the world beyond our town. We fought. I left. He didn't speak to me through basic, through AIT, through my first deployment. What changed? I almost died. IED hit our convoy outside Kandahar. Shrapnel through my leg. I called him from the hospital in Germany. He answered on the first ring, told me he'd been waiting, that he was sorry, that he loved me. She paused, her eyes distant with memory. Sometimes, sir, people need to see you almost lose everything before they remember what they already have. Maybe your son needs that, or maybe you do. Before Cole could respond, the roar of a diesel engine cut through the morning air. The Barys 8x8 rolled into the yard, its 8 massive tires kicking up dust, its turret traversing smoothly. Even at idle, it had presence. Not the brutal mass of an Abrams, but something different. Predatory, efficient. Elena Volkov stood beside the vehicle, pride evident in her posture. Tess and Webb were already climbing aboard, running pre-operation checks. Hendricks appeared at Cole's elbow. First mobility trial in 30 minutes. You'll observe from the chase vehicle, get a feel for how it moves, how the crew operates. Tomorrow, you start pushing it hard. Cole nodded, his eyes still on the Barys, on his son's distant figure, on the missions ahead, both mechanical and personal. The first test began, as all tests do, with hope and caution in equal measure. Cole rode in a Humvee, trailing the Barys across 50 miles of Mojave terrain. The route was designed to stress mobility. Sand dunes that swallowed lesser vehicles, rocky washes that snapped axles, steep grades that tested engines and transmissions. Through it all, the Barys moved with surprising grace. Its 8 independent wheels absorbed terrain that would have challenged tracked vehicles. Orozco drove with skill, her hands light on the controls, the vehicle responding like it was reading her mind. From the Humvee, Cole watched and made notes. Mobility, excellent. Better than expected for wheeled platform. 8x8 configuration provides redundancy and stability. Suspect would outperform Striker on rough ground. They stopped at a staging area for crew rotation and system checks. Cole approached the Barys, walked its perimeter, ran his hands over the hull, felt the heat radiating from the engine compartment. Elena appeared beside him. Impressions, Captain? It moves well, better than I anticipated. The suspension system is sophisticated. Designed by South African engineers. They understand rough terrain. We adapted their work for extreme temperatures. Cole knelt, examined the tire assemblies. Heavy-duty run flats, puncture-resistant. What about ballistic protection? These tires are big targets. Tires can be destroyed, yes, but vehicle remains mobile on 6 wheels, even 5 if necessary. We have tested. Central tire inflation system allows pressure adjustment on the move for terrain optimization. Professional. Competent. Cole appreciated that. He stood, turned to face her. Dr. Volkov, I need to be straight with you. I'm old school armor, tracks and heavy metal. Wheeled AFVs make me nervous. Too many variables, too many things that can go wrong. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Captain Mitchell, I understand skepticism. I am engineer. I believe in testing, in data, in proof. So I ask only this. Test Barys fairly, push hard, break it if you can, but judge on evidence, not assumption. That's my job. Good, because soldiers' lives depend on us both doing our jobs correctly. The weight of that statement hung between them. The afternoon brought fire control testing. Webb took the gunner station operating the AU-220M turret from inside the crew compartment. Targets were placed at ranges from 500 to 2,000 meters. Old vehicle hulks, plywood mock-ups, thermal signatures to test the sensors. Cole observed from the interior, watching Webb work. The young sergeant was smooth, his movements economical. The turret slewed to targets with computer-assisted precision. The fire control system calculated range, lead, wind, all in fractions of a second. Target acquired, 1,200 meters, Sabot. Webb's voice was calm, professional. The 57-millimeter cannon spoke, a sharp crack that resonated through the hull. Downrange, the target exploded in a shower of sparks and steel. Hit! Target destroyed. They ran through 8 more engagements. 8 more kills. The system was impressive, no question. But Cole had been in combat. He'd seen perfect systems fail under stress, under fire, under the unpredictable chaos of real battle. How does it perform in dust, smoke, electronic countermeasures? Elena, monitoring from a laptop, responded, thermal optics penetrate dust and smoke effectively. Electronic systems are hardened against EMP and jamming. We have tested in controlled conditions. Tomorrow you can test in the field conditions if you wish. I wish. Day 1 ended with his crew exhausted but intact. The Barys had performed beyond Cole's initial expectations. He hated admitting that, even to himself. That evening, Cole sat alone in the motor pool, watching the Barys under the harsh glow of sodium lights. Maintenance crews swarmed it, performing post-operation checks, looking for stress fractures, fluid leaks, anything that might indicate hidden problems. He thought about Sergeant Ramos, about the Abrams that had kept them alive right up until it didn't, about the thin line between protection and coffin. Footsteps approached. Jake. Cole turned, surprised. Jake's expression was guarded, but he'd come. That meant something. Sir, thought you should know. There's a weather warning, unseasonable heat wave coming through. Temps expected to hit 115, maybe 118 tomorrow. Understood. We'll adjust the test schedule. Jake hesitated, then spoke again. The vehicle, the Barys, what do you think so far? Cole considered the question. The first real one his son had asked him in 3 years. It's impressive, better than I expected. But impressive in testing and reliable in combat are different things. You always said that about every new system. You never trusted anything that wasn't battle-proven. Still don't. Maybe that's your problem. Maybe some things are worth trusting before they've proven themselves in blood. The statement hung there, clearly about more than vehicles. Cole met his son's eyes. Maybe you're right. Jake nodded slowly, then turned to leave. But he paused. Dad, one more thing. Colonel Hendricks told me you're fighting a medical discharge. PTSD and chronic pain. Is that true? No point lying. Yes. And this evaluation, it's your last mission? Probably. Jake's jaw worked, emotions warring behind his eyes. Then make it count. Whatever happened between us, whatever I feel about how you prioritize the Army over family, you're still the best tanker I've ever seen. Don't let the ghosts win. Not now. He walked away before Cole could respond. Alone again, Cole felt something shift in his chest. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the first crack in the wall he'd built between himself and everyone he'd ever loved. Day 3 brought the heat wave, 115 degrees by 0900, 118 by noon, the kind of heat that killed engines and men with equal indifference. Cole decided to stress test the Barys' environmental systems. 12-hour continuous operation, he told the crew. Full combat load, NBC SEALs engaged, no breaks except for driver rotation. Elena protested. Captain, this is beyond normal operational parameters. The winterized systems are adapted for desert, yes, but this heat is extreme. Combat is extreme, Doctor. If Barys can't handle extreme, it can't handle combat. Tess, Webb, and Orozco loaded up. Hendricks observed from the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center. The test began. For the first 8 hours, everything functioned. The HVAC system, powerful and redundant, kept the crew compartment at a survivable 80 degrees. The engine ran hot, but within tolerances. The crew rotated through positions, staying hydrated, staying focused. Cole monitored from the chase vehicle, watching thermal readouts, listening to crew communications. Hour 9, temperature inside the Barys started climbing. 82 degrees, 85, 90. Hour 10, 95 degrees, crew voices showed strain. Orozco, sir, it's getting tough in here, AC struggling. Cole, can you continue? Tess, We can push through, sir, but it's getting close. Hour 11. 100 degrees inside the crew compartment. The vehicle was an oven. Then the warning alarms. Engine temperature spiking. Coolant system overloading. The Barys' massive diesel was cooking itself. Elena's voice tight with stress. Captain, you must stop. Engine temperature critical. Risk of permanent damage. Cole made the call. All stations, shut down. Emergency stop. Crew, evacuate now. The Barys rolled to a halt. Hatches popped open. Tess, Webb, and Orozco practically fell out, gasping in the relatively cooler 115-degree air. Maintenance crews rushed forward with water, with cooling equipment, with concern written on their faces. Cole approached the vehicle, climbed up to inspect the engine compartment. Even from outside, the heat was staggering. Elena was there, her laptop connected to diagnostic ports, her face pale. The cooling system was not designed for sustained operation in these temperatures. We optimized for Arctic conditions, adapted for desert, but not for extremes like this. This is my fault. My team's fault. Cole studied the data over her shoulder. The winterized systems, so effective in Kazakhstan's brutal cold, had thermal management designed for different parameters. The redundancy was there, but calibrated wrong. He thought about what Jake had said, about trust, about giving things a chance. Dr. Volkov, this isn't a fatal flaw. It's a calibration issue. Your systems work. They just need adjustment for American operational environments. Elena looked at him, surprise evident. You are not recommending program cancellation? I'm recommending you fix the problem. Work with our engineers. Recalibrate the thermal management. Test again. If you can solve this, the vehicle has real potential. Relief flooded her features. We can fix this. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Cole nodded. You've got 3 weeks. Then we test again. Harder. That night, after debriefs and reports and crew medical checks, Cole found himself back at the motor pool. The Barry sat silent, its engine cold now, diagnostic equipment swarming it like remoras on a shark. Elena worked alone at a portable workstation, her fingers flying over keys, her focus absolute. Cole approached, 2 cups of terrible motor pool coffee in hand. He offered one. She accepted, surprised. You did not have to do this. Seemed like you could use it. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 people joined by machinery and loss. Your son, Elena said quietly. I saw you speak with him. There is pain there. 3 years of it, maybe more. My daughter Anya is 9. She asks about her father every day. I tell her he is watching from heaven, that he is proud of her. But truth is, I do not know what he would think of what I am doing. Building weapons, building machines of war. You're building protection. There's a difference. Is there? Ryan died in one of my prototypes. How is that protection? Cole had no easy answer, so he gave her the truth. Sergeant Ramos died because I put him in danger. Because I made tactical decisions that led to him being in that tank, on that street when that IED exploded. I've carried that for 15 years. Blamed the vehicle, blamed the army, blamed everyone except myself. He paused, the words harder than expected. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe Ramos died because war is chaos and chaos kills. And maybe the only thing we can do is try to give the next Sergeant Ramos a better chance. That's what you're doing. That's what I should have been doing instead of running from ghosts. Elena's eyes glistened in the harsh light. You are a good man, Captain Mitchell. Damaged, yes, but good. You're a good engineer, Dr. Volkov, and you're doing this for the right reasons. Their eyes met and held, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, respect, the beginning of something neither had expected to find. We should get some rest, Cole said finally. Tomorrow starts early. Yes, early. Thank you, Captain, for the coffee, for the honesty. Cole walked back to his quarters through the desert night, the stars above indifferent and eternal. His back ached, his mind churned, but somewhere in his chest, something that had been frozen for a long time started, just barely, to thaw. He thought about Ramos, about Jennifer, about Jake, about all the ways he'd failed the people he was supposed to protect. And he thought about Elena's words, about trying to give the next soldier a better chance. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all any of them could do. The first week ended with the Barys in pieces, engineers from 3 countries working around the clock to recalibrate systems. Cole watched them work, learning, absorbing, beginning to understand the vehicle not just as a machine, but as a philosophy. Mobility over armor, crew survivability over brute force, adaptation over tradition. It challenged everything he'd believed for 28 years, And that was terrifying and necessary in equal measure. On the seventh night, Cole sat in his quarters and did something he hadn't done in months. He wrote, not a report, not an evaluation, a letter. To Jake. He didn't know if he'd ever send it, didn't know if his son would read it if he did, but he wrote anyway, pouring out words he'd kept locked away. I'm sorry, I chose wrong. I chose the mission over you, over your mother, over everything that should have mattered most. I told myself I was serving something bigger, protecting the nation, leading soldiers who depended on me, and I was doing those things. But I was also running from intimacy, from vulnerability, from the terror of being a father and failing at it. You deserve better. You deserved a dad who showed up, who was present, who chose you. I can't change the past, can't undo 3 years of silence or 28 years of absence, but I can try to do better now. Starting with this mission, starting with being honest about who I am and what I've done. If you never want to speak to me after this evaluation is done, I'll understand, but know that I'm proud of you, proud of the man you've become despite my failures. You're a better soldier and a better person than I ever was. Your father, Cole, he folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and set it on his desk. Tomorrow he'd decide whether to deliver it. For now, it was enough that he'd written it. Outside, the desert night sang with the sound of machinery being rebuilt, of systems being refined, of people working toward a common goal. Somewhere in that darkness, his son stood watch. Somewhere, Elena labored over equations and specifications. Somewhere, the Barys waited to be tested again. And Cole Mitchell, broken but not beaten, prepared for the trials ahead. The last command of his career would be the hardest, not because of the vehicle, not because of the politics, but because for the first time in decades, he was fighting for something more than mission success. He was fighting for redemption, for connection, for the chance to leave a legacy that mattered beyond metal and fire. The test would come, the heat, the stress, the moment when everything either held or failed. And Cole would be ready. He had to be, because this time failure meant losing more than a career. It meant losing the last chance to be the man he should have been all along. The desert dawn broke with the kind of light that promised either redemption or reckoning. Cole Mitchell stood in the motor pool at 0530, watching the sun climb over the chocolate mountains, while engineers swarmed the Barys like battlefield surgeons around a wounded soldier. 3 weeks had passed since the cooling system failure. 3 weeks of round-the-clock collaboration between Elena's team, Army engineers from Aberdeen Proving Ground, and civilian contractors who specialized in thermal management. The Barys had been transformed from the inside out, its systems recalibrated for the brutal reality of American desert operations. Cole had spent those weeks doing something he hadn't done in years, learning, listening, setting aside 3 decades of certainty to absorb new knowledge from people who saw armor through different eyes. Elena had been patient, answering his questions no matter how basic, walking him through thermal dynamics and fluid mechanics in the intricate dance between engine output and cooling capacity. Her passion was infectious, her expertise undeniable. And slowly, grudgingly, Cole began to see the Barys not as a threat to everything he knew, but as an evolution of it. The sun climbed higher. Colonel Hendricks approached, 2 paper cups of coffee steaming in the cool morning air. Big day, Cole. You ready to test the fixes? Cole accepted the coffee, grateful for the ritual of it. Ready as I'll ever be. Elena's team has been thorough. The new cooling system has triple redundancy, glycol-based primary, emergency evaporative backup, and a third tier that draws from the crew water supply if everything else fails. Sounds complicated. It is, but complicated means survivable. In Fallujah, simple systems failed and men died. Maybe complicated is what we need. Hendricks studied his old friend, noting the change in him, the softening of that rigid certainty. You're different, Cole, these 3 weeks. You're not the same man who showed up angry and broken. Cole thought about that, about late nights working alongside Elena, about brief conversations with Jake that were starting, painfully, to move beyond monosyllables, about Tess and Webb and Orozco becoming not just crew, but something like family. Maybe I'm just tired of being angry, or maybe I'm realizing that the mission isn't about being right. It's about getting people home alive. That's wisdom talking, about damn time. The test crew assembled at 0700. Tess Rourke moved with her usual efficiency, checking gear, reviewing protocols. Webb was methodical as always, running weapons systems diagnostics with the focus of a concert pianist. Orozco practically vibrated with energy, eager to push the Barys to its limits. Elena stood apart, tablet in hand, monitoring real-time data feeds from sensors buried throughout the vehicle. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of too many sleepless nights, but her spine was straight, her jaw set. Jake Mitchell Jr. appeared at the perimeter, his security detail shift starting. He caught Cole's eye, gave a slight nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. It was something. Cole gathered the crew for the briefing. Today we run Gauntlet Protocol Phase 2. Everything we did before, plus extended fire missions, mine strike simulations, and chemical environment operations. We're going to push this vehicle until something breaks or we prove it can handle anything combat throws at it. He paused, looking at each face in turn. 3 weeks ago, we failed. The Barys overheated, and we had to abort. That failure is on me. I pushed too hard without understanding the systems. But failure teaches if we're willing to learn. Dr. Volkov and her team have rebuilt the thermal management from the ground up. Now we find out if the lesson stuck. Elena stepped forward. The new cooling system is rated for sustained operations in temperatures up to 50 degrees Celsius, approximately 122 Fahrenheit. We have tested extensively in controlled conditions, but Captain Mitchell is correct. Real-world stress is the only true test. Tess spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of experience. Sir, what happens if we have another failure? Emergency protocols? Same as before. You call it, we abort. No one dies proving a point. But Tess, I believe this system will hold. Elena's work is solid. The statement surprised everyone, including Elena. Cole Mitchell, believing in something unproven, went against his entire nature. They loaded into the Barys. Cole took the commander's position in the crew compartment, surrounded by screens and controls that looked more like a spacecraft than a fighting vehicle. The interior smelled of new materials and fresh lubricant, and the particular tension that came before dangerous work. Orozco settled into the driver's station, her hands finding controls with the ease of familiarity. Webb powered up the AU-220M turret, the remote system humming to life. Tess coordinated from the senior NCO position, her steady presence anchoring the crew. The engine roared. 8 wheels bit into desert hardpan. The Barys rolled forward into the proving grounds, into the heat that was already building toward lethal, into the test that would determine everything. The first hour was controlled chaos. Mobility drills through terrain that would have stopped lesser vehicles. The Barys climbed grades that approached 40 degrees, its 8-wheel drive clawing for purchase and finding it. Descended into washes filled with sand fine as powder that swallowed wheels up to the hubs. Powered through the independent suspension, working like the legs of some massive insect. Inside, the temperature held steady at 78 degrees. The crew worked in relative comfort, their bodies not fighting environmental stress, their minds clear for tactical operations. Cole monitored everything: engine temp, coolant flow, crew vital signs, radio communications. He was conducting a symphony of systems, each one critical, all of them interdependent. Hour 2 brought weapons testing. Webb engaged targets from 500 to 2,500 meters. The 57mm cannon spoke with authority, each round precisely placed. The fire control computer compensated for vehicle motion, wind, temperature, hit after hit after hit. Cole called adjustments, testing the system's flexibility. Target left, 1,200 meters, moving, speed approximately 30 kilometers per hour. Webb's response was instant. Acquired, tracking, lead calculated, firing. The round caught the moving target dead center. Metal shredded and flew. Kill, target destroyed. They ran through 40 engagements, 40 kills. The AU-220M turret proved itself not just capable, but superior to anything Cole had seen on a striker. Hour 3, temperature outside 108 degrees and climbing. Inside the Barys, 79 degrees, systems holding. They rotated crew positions, letting each member experience different stations. Cross-training, building redundancy, the kind of preparation that saved lives when chaos came calling. Jake's voice crackled over the security channel, monitoring from the observation post. Captain Mitchell, weather station reports temperature 115 degrees, humidity 8%. Recommend hydration protocols. Cole acknowledged. Copy. All stations hydrate now. Crew rotation in 30 minutes. But they didn't rotate, because at hour 4, the real test began. The scenario was designed by Jake's infantry platoon, veterans of Afghanistan who knew how fights actually happened. Not clean, not predictable, ugly and confused and deadly. Ambush. The Barys rolled through a simulated urban environment, plywood buildings and shipping containers arranged to mimic a Middle Eastern town. The kind of place where every corner could hide an RPG, every window a sniper. Cole commanded from his station, eyes flickering between screens showing 360-degree coverage. Driver, speed 10 kilometers per hour. Gunner, scan sectors 1 and 2. Infantry, prepare for dismount on my command. The world exploded. Simulated IEDs detonated fore and aft, not real explosives, but flashbangs and concussion charges that hammered the bearers like the fists of giants. Smoke poured into the street. Laser designators painted the vehicle from multiple directions, simulating RPG fire. Cole's world narrowed to the immediate, the training, the instinct, the muscle memory carved from 28 years. Contact front and right, driver evasive right, gunner engage building 3. Orozco threw the bearers into a hard turn, 8 wheels clawing for traction. Webb slewed the turret, found the target, fired. The simulated building erupted with pyrotechnics, marking a kill. More lasers, more smoke. The Barys rocked from simulated hits. The blast seats absorbed shock that would have broken spines in lesser vehicles. And through it all, Cole felt something he hadn't felt since Iraq. The clarity, the purpose, the absolute certainty of action in chaos. Infantry, dismount now. Establish security left. Hatches popped. The 7 dismounts poured out. Jake's soldiers moving with practiced efficiency. They formed a perimeter while the Barys continued to fight, its cannon suppressing threats, its presence providing cover. The ambush played out over 8 minutes that felt like hours. When the smoke cleared and the exercise controllers called Index, the Barys sat in the middle of controlled devastation, its crew intact, its systems functional. Tessa's voice came over internal comms, steady despite the adrenaline. All stations status check. Responses flowed back. Everyone green. Systems operational. Mission success. Cole allowed himself a breath, then another. His back ached from the impact of simulated explosions. His hands trembled slightly from the adrenaline dump, but he was smiling. Dr. Volkov, you reading telemetry? Elena's voice came through, tight with emotion. Reading, Captain. All systems nominal. Temperature spiked during engagement to 83 degrees, returned to 79 within 2 minutes. Cooling system performed flawlessly. Copy that. Crew, prepare for phase 2. We're not done. They weren't, because Cole had designed this evaluation to be comprehensive, to test everything, including the things that terrified him most. Phase 2 was the minefield. The test range had been prepared with simulated anti-tank mines, sophisticated enough to trigger on weight and magnetic signature, explosive enough to replicate the blast characteristics of real ordnance without actually killing anyone. The Barys would drive through it, deliberately, testing the V-shaped hull and blast-resistant seats and crew survivability systems that Elena had promised would keep soldiers alive. Cole explained the protocol to the crew. We will hit at least 1 mine, possibly 2. The blast will be significant, loud, violent, but the math says we'll survive. The engineering says the vehicle will protect us. He paused, his throat suddenly tight. I need you to trust the vehicle. Trust the design. Trust that Elena and her team built this right. Tess met his eyes through the internal camera feed. Sir, do you trust it? The question hung there, heavy with meaning, because this was the core of everything. Could Cole Mitchell, who had pulled a burning man from a tank 15 years ago, who had nightmares about metal coffins and screaming soldiers, trust a vehicle he didn't fully understand to protect people he was responsible for? The answer came from somewhere deep. Yes, I trust it. They entered the minefield at 5 kilometers per hour. Slow, methodical. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. His palms sweated despite the climate control. The familiar tightness began in his chest, the precursor to panic. But this time he had tools. Dr. Chen's breathing exercises. The understanding that panic was a reaction, not a reality. The knowledge that he could function through it. He breathed, counted, focused on the screens. 20 meters, 30, 40. The mine detonated beneath the right front wheel. The world became noise and violence. The blast wave hit like a punch from God. The Barys lifted, the V-shaped hull channeling explosive force outward and away. The blast seats absorbed shock through a combination of engineering and sacrifice, giving up structural integrity to save flesh and bone. Cole's vision tunneled. His ears rang. For a terrible moment, he was back in Fallujah. Ramos burning, the smell of diesel and blood and burning rubber. Then Tess's voice cutting through the chaos. All stations report. Driver green. Gunner green. Infantry all green. Cole forced words through a throat that wanted to scream. Commander Green, driver, continue forward. We're not done. They hit 2 more mines before clearing the field. Each time, the Barys absorbed the blast. Each time, the crew remained intact. Each time, Cole fought his demons and won by the thinnest of margins. When they finally stopped beyond the test area, the vehicle was scorched and battered, but functional. The crew was shaken but alive. The mission was complete. Cole stepped out into the searing afternoon heat and promptly vomited into the sand. The adrenaline dump, the PTSD aftermath, the cost of command. Elena was there, had run from the observation vehicle, her hand on his shoulder while he heaved. Cole, you did it. You stayed with your crew. You did not freeze. He straightened, wiped his mouth, tried to find dignity in the ruins of his composure. I almost did, almost froze, almost failed them. But you did not. That is what matters. Jake appeared, having sprinted from his security post. His face was pale, his eyes wide. Dad, Jesus Christ, Dad, are you okay? Cole looked at his son, saw fear there, and something else. Something that looked like pride trying to break through layers of resentment. I'm okay, Jake, I'm okay. Jake helped him to the medical tent, where corpsmen waited to check vitals and assess for shock. Tess and Webb and Orozco were already there, their faces dirt-streaked and alive with the particular intensity that came after surviving something that could have killed them. Sir, Tess said, her voice rough, that was the most intense test I've ever been through, and that vehicle saved our lives. No question. Webb nodded agreement. The mind blast that hit under me, I felt it through the seat, but the energy just disappeared, dispersed. I should be crippled. I'm not even bruised. Orozco was practically bouncing despite obvious exhaustion. Captain, I was scared as hell, but I never doubted we'd make it. That's the difference. In a striker, I'd have been terrified. In the Barys, I was scared but confident. Does that make sense? It did. Perfect sense. The debriefs lasted 3 hours. Data was analyzed. Systems were inspected. The Barys had taken damage, surface level, cosmetic, but its core remained sound. The crew had survived stresses that would have destroyed lesser vehicles. Major General Robert Hayes had observed everything via drone feed and ground cameras. He arrived at the test facility as the sun began its descent, his expression unreadable. Cole stood at attention, prepared for judgment. Hayes walked a slow circle around the battered Barys, running his hand over blast-scarred armor, examining wheels that had absorbed mine strikes and continued rolling. Finally, he spoke. Captain Mitchell, I came to this evaluation with significant doubts. Wheeled AFVs have limitations. Foreign partnerships have complications. The politics of this program are treacherous. He paused, turned to face Cole directly. But what I saw today was remarkable. A vehicle that does what we claim our vehicles do, but often don't. It protected its crew under conditions that would have caused casualties in current systems. The thermal management worked flawlessly in heat that shut down a test last month. And most importantly, I watched a commander lead his people through hell and bring them home intact. Hayes extended his hand. You've convinced me, Captain. I'll recommend limited procurement to the acquisition board. 50 vehicles for initial operational evaluation with 3rd Brigade. Dr. Volkov, your team should be proud. Elena, who had been holding her breath, nodded shakily. Thank you, General. This means everything to us. Hayes turned to leave, then stopped. Mitchell, one more thing. I've reviewed your medical board recommendation. Given what I witnessed today, your ability to function under extreme stress, I'll personally submit a letter supporting your retention. You've earned another 2 years if you want them. He departed, leaving Cole standing in the fading light with the weight of vindication settling on shoulders that had carried failure for too long. That evening, the crew gathered at a local restaurant in Barstow, the small town outside Fort Irwin that had served soldiers for generations. It was a celebration, informal, loud, necessary. Tess bought the first round. Webb told stories that got progressively more exaggerated with each beer. Orozco challenged everyone to arm wrestling and won more often than she should have. Even Elena relaxed, her usual intensity softening into something approaching joy. Cole sat at the edge of it all, nursing a single beer, watching his team, feeling something he couldn't quite name. Contentment, maybe. Or the absence of the constant grinding anxiety that had been his companion for years. Jake slid into the seat beside him, not invited but not unwelcome. They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the bar washing over them. Finally, Jake spoke. When that mine went off, when the Barys lifted and I couldn't see anything but smoke and dust, I thought I'd lost you again. For real this time. Cole set down his beer. But you didn't. No, but I realized something. I've been angry at you for choosing the army over us. Over me. But today I saw why you do it. Why you did it. You're good at this, Dad. Really good. And those soldiers, your crew, they trust you because you're worth trusting. Even when you're scared, even when you're broken, you still show up. The words hit like the mind blast. Unexpected, devastating, necessary. Jake, I was a terrible father. I made choices that hurt you and your mother. I can't undo that. No, you can't. But maybe we can start from here, from who we are now instead of who we were then. Cole felt his throat tighten. I'd like that, if you're willing. Jake nodded slowly. I'm willing. But Dad, you have to promise me something. When this evaluation is over, when you've got your 2 years, you have to actually retire, for real. No more missions, no more choosing the bomb over everything else. You have to let yourself be something other than Captain Mitchell. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. You learned how to trust that Barys. You learned how to work with Dr. Volkov's team. You can learn how to be a father again, and maybe I can learn how to be a son. They shook hands, a formal gesture that carried informal weight. It wasn't forgiveness, not complete, not yet, but it was movement, progress. The first real step towards something that might eventually look like healing. Across the bar, Elena watched the exchange. When Cole caught her eyes, she smiled. A real smile, warm and open and knowing. Later, after the crew had dispersed to hotels and barracks and temporary quarters, Cole and Elena found themselves walking through the cool desert night. The stars above were countless, undimmed by city lights. You did well today, Cole. Very well. We did well. Your engineering, my crew, all of us together. Yes, together. That is an important word, I think. They walked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from shared experience and mutual respect. Elena spoke again, her voice softer now. When you were in that minefield, I was terrified. Not for program, not for Barys, for you. I realized I have come to care about what happens to you, more than is perhaps professional. Cole stopped walking, looked at her in the starlight. Elena, I'm a broken man, PTSD, failed marriage, estranged son. I'm not good relationship material. And I am widow with dead husband and traumatized child. We are both broken, Cole, but maybe broken pieces can fit together in new ways. Make something different, something strong. She reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were cool and sure. I am not asking for promises, not asking for future, but I am asking if you feel what I feel. This connection, this understanding. Cole thought about Sergeant Ramos, about Jennifer, about all the ways he'd failed to connect, to be present, to let people in. And he thought about the mind blast, about staying present, about choosing to trust instead of fear. I feel it, and it terrifies me. Good. Terror means it matters, means it is real. They stood there in the desert dark, two damaged souls finding unexpected comfort in proximity. They didn't kiss, didn't make promises, just held hands like teenagers, like people learning how to be human again. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of testing. Every scenario Cole could imagine. Night operations with thermal optics, chemical environment simulations with the crew sealed in NBC gear, extended range patrols that push fuel consumption to the limit, maintenance operations under field conditions. The Barys passed everything, not flawlessly. There were minor failures, adjustments needed, systems that required refinement, but nothing catastrophic, nothing that couldn't be fixed. And through it all, Cole felt himself changing. The rigid certainty of 3 decades melting into something more flexible. The belief that his way was the only way, giving ground to the understanding that evolution mattered, that adaptation was strength, not weakness. He worked closely with Elena, learning the philosophy behind the design. The Barys wasn't trying to replace the Abrams. It was filling a different role. Rapid deployment, urban operations, peacekeeping, the kind of missions that American forces actually conducted most often, where mobility and crew protection mattered more than heavy armor and massive guns. Jake became a fixture at the evening debriefs, offering infantry perspective, challenging assumptions, asking questions that sharpened everyone's thinking. The wall between father and son was still there, but they were dismantling it brick by brick. Tess, Webb, and Orozco became not just crew but friends. They pushed Cole to socialize, to laugh, to remember that soldiers were people first and warriors second. On the final day of week 11, Cole submitted his interim report to Colonel Hendricks and Major General Hayes. 20 pages of dense technical analysis, data tables, comparison metrics, and one simple conclusion. The Barys 8x8 is operationally suitable for procurement and fielding. Recommend initial buy of 50 vehicles for 3rd Brigade Combat Team with option for expanded procurement pending operational evaluation. Vehicle represents significant advancement in crew survivability and operational flexibility for rapid deployment forces. Hendricks read the report with something approaching amazement. Cole, I've known you 25 years. I've never seen you recommend anything that wasn't already battle-proven. You're actually endorsing this vehicle. I am, because the data supports it, because the crew trusts it, because it does what it claims to do. Marcus, the Barys isn't perfect, but it's very good. And good enough is what soldiers need. The board meets in 3 days. Pentagon. You'll present findings in person. Dr. Volkov will present technical data. This is the final hurdle. Cole nodded, feeling the weight of it. Understood, we'll be ready. But they weren't ready for what came next. 2 nights before the Pentagon presentation, Cole received a package at his quarters. No return address, no note, just a manila envelope stuffed with documents. He opened it with growing dread. Inside were financial records, wire transfers, corporate filings, photographs. Kazakhstan Paramount Engineering had received significant investment from Chinese defense subsidiaries over the past 18 months. Elena had attended conferences in Beijing, met with People's Liberation Army officials. The paper trail suggested possible technology transfer, intellectual property sharing, connections that raised every red flag intelligence agencies had. There was more. Photos of Elena meeting with Chinese nationals at international defense exhibitions, circumstantial, potentially innocent, but damning in aggregate. A note typed, anonymous. Dr. Volkov is not who she claims. The Barys program is compromised. Do you trust who's evaluating your recommendation? Cole's hands shook as he read and reread the documents. His mind raced through possibilities. False intelligence designed to kill the program. Real concerns about foreign influence. Coincidence blown out of proportion. He thought about Elena, her passion, her honesty, her grief over Ryan's death, the way she looked at her daughter, the vulnerability she'd shown him. Could all of it be performance, manipulation, or was someone trying to weaponize his trust? He called Hendricks, woke him at 0200, didn't care. Marcus, we have a problem. They met in a secure conference room 30 minutes later. Cole spread the documents across the table. Hendricks read in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. Where did you get this? Anonymous delivery, 2 hours ago. And you believe it? Cole wanted to say no, wanted to dismiss it as disinformation, but he'd been a soldier too long to ignore evidence. I don't know what to believe, but we need to investigate before I stand in front of Pentagon brass recommending this program. Hendricks made calls, pulled strings. By dawn, Army CID and counterintelligence had agents en route. Elena arrived for the morning briefing unaware. Cole watched her, trying to reconcile the woman he'd come to care about with the possibility that she was something else entirely. When CID took her into custody for questioning, her face went white with shock and betrayal. Cole, what is happening? What have I done? He couldn't answer because he didn't know, and that uncertainty was its own kind of agony. Jake found him 2 hours later, sitting alone in the motor pool staring at the Barys. Dad, what the hell is going on? Why is Dr. Volkov being interrogated? Cole explained, showed Jake the documents, watched his son process the implications. Do you think she's a spy? I think someone wants me to think that. But Jake, intelligence work is smoke and mirrors. Truth is whatever serves the narrative. I've seen good people destroyed by false accusations and traitors walk free because evidence wasn't enough. So what do you do? Cole stood, decision hardening into certainty. I find the truth, and I trust my gut. Elena Volkov is a lot of things, but she's not a traitor. Someone is setting her up, and I'm going to find out who. The investigation took 18 hours. CID was thorough. They traced the financial records back to their source, examined the photographs, interviewed Elena at length. What they found was simultaneously simple and ugly. The documents were real, but they'd been taken out of context, carefully curated to suggest conspiracy where there was only business. Kazakhstan Paramount had Chinese investors because many international defense companies did. Elena had attended conferences in Beijing because that was part of being a global engineer. The meetings were documented, official, transparent. The anonymous package had been assembled by a lobbying firm working for a major defense contractor. The same contractor that built strikers. The same contractor that stood to lose billions if the Barys program succeeded. They tried to kill the program by destroying Elena's credibility, and they'd nearly succeeded. When Elena was finally released, she found Cole waiting outside the interrogation facility. Her eyes were red from crying, her posture defeated. They tell me I am cleared, that accusations were false. But Cole, you believed them. I saw it in your eyes. You doubted me. He had no defense because it was true. I'm sorry, I should have trusted you. Should have known better. Should have, yes, but did not. And that tells me everything about where we stand. You and I, we are colleagues, maybe friends, but we are not partners. Partners trust even when evidence says not to. She walked away, and Cole let her go, because he had no words that could bridge the gap his doubt had created. Jake, who had witnessed the exchange, shook his head. Dad, you really screwed that up. I know. So fix it. You're good at fixing broken vehicles. Try fixing a broken relationship. Cole spent the next 12 hours thinking about trust, about fear, about the ways he'd let fear drive every decision for 15 years. He found Elena at midnight in the motor pool saying goodbye to the Barys. Her flight back to Kazakhstan was booked for the next morning. The Pentagon presentation would happen without her. Elena, wait. She turned, her face a mask of professional distance. Captain Mitchell, if you have questions about technical specifications, I have prepared briefing materials for you to present. I don't need briefing materials. I need to apologize. Really apologize. Not just words, but understanding. He moved closer, careful not to crowd her. I doubted you because I'm afraid. Afraid of trusting, afraid of being wrong, afraid of getting hurt or getting others hurt. For 15 years, fear has driven everything. And today, fear almost made me destroy something real. Elena's mask cracked slightly. You hurt me, Cole. Made me feel like I was back in interrogation rooms after Ryan died. Everyone asking if I had somehow caused the accident, if I was negligent, if I deserved to lose him. I know, and I'm sorry. You deserve my faith. You earned it, and I failed you. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. My mother used to say that trust is not gift. It is practice. You must practice every day, choosing belief over doubt. I have practiced trusting you, Cole, every day since we met. Now I am asking if you will practice trusting me. Cole thought about Sergeant Ramos, about the minefield, about every moment when he'd chosen to move forward despite terror. I will, I am. Elena, come to Washington, present with me. Let's finish this together. She studied his face, looking for truth. Whatever she found there was enough. Together, yes, we finished together. They stood in the motor pool darkness, beside the Barys that had brought them together. And this time when they held hands, it felt less like experiment and more like promise. The Pentagon presentation was scheduled for 1400 hours, 2 days later. Cole and Elena flew commercial from California to Washington, reviewing data and refining arguments. They arrived at the Pentagon with an hour to spare. The building was exactly as imposing as its reputation suggested, 5 sides of concrete and power and bureaucratic momentum. The briefing room held 20 people, generals, acquisition officials, congressional liaisons, everyone who had a stake in whether the Barys program lived or died. Major General Hayes was there, his expression unreadable. Colonel Hendricks sat in the back, giving Cole a small nod of encouragement. And in one corner, barely visible, was a man Cole recognized from photographs in the intelligence file, a senior executive from the defense contractor who tried to sabotage Elena. He wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed, just watching to see if his manipulation had worked. Cole felt rage rise, hot and clean. He tamped it down, channeled it. The presentation began. Elena presented technical specifications with the precision of someone who'd lived these systems for years. Every question she answered with data and confidence and the particular authority that came from knowing you'd built something extraordinary. Then it was Cole's turn. He stood, looked at the assembled power and told the truth. I came to this evaluation as a skeptic. Wheeled armored vehicles have always seemed like compromises. Too light, too vulnerable, not suitable for real combat. I believed in tracks and heavy metal and the lessons carved from 3 decades in armor. He clicked to the next slide showing the Barys after the mine strike tests. This vehicle changed my mind, not because it's perfect, it's not, But because it does what we claim our systems do and often don't, it protects crews. It provides mobility in terrain where tracked vehicles struggle. It brings soldiers home alive. Another slide, thermal data from the endurance tests. The cooling system works, even in 118-degree heat, even under sustained operations that would have killed lesser vehicles. The crew remained combat effective throughout. Slide after slide, data after data point. The story told itself. Cole finished with one final statement. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm an old tanker, set in my ways, resistant to change. But combat teaches one lesson above all others: adapt or die. The Barys represents adaptation, and I believe it will save American lives. I recommend procurement. The room erupted in questions. For 90 minutes, Cole and Elena fielded challenges, explained decisions, defended choices. Through it all, they worked as a unit, anticipating each other's points, reinforcing each other's arguments. Finally, the senior acquisition officer called for a vote. 15 hands rose in favor of limited procurement, 3 against, 2 abstentions. The Barys program would move forward. As the room cleared, the contractor executive approached Cole. His smile was oily and wrong. Quite a performance, Captain, though I'm surprised you proceeded after the concerns about Dr. Volkov's connections were raised. Cole turned, and something in his expression made the man take a step back. Those concerns were fabrications, disinformation, lies designed to kill a program for profit, and I know you were behind them. The man's smile didn't falter. Careful, Captain. Accusations require evidence. I have evidence. CID has evidence. And if you ever try to manipulate another evaluation, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. He walked away, leaving the contractor fuming. Outside the Pentagon, in the spring sunshine, Elena grabbed Cole's hand. We did it. We actually did it. You did it? I just told people what you'd already proven. No, we did it together, as it should be. They stood there, 2 people who'd come to this moment from very different places, united by purpose and growing affection. Jake called that evening. His voice was warm in a way Cole hadn't heard in years. Dad, Colonel Hendricks told me the news. Congratulations. You changed minds. That's not easy. Thanks, son. That means a lot. Listen, I've been thinking. When you get back, when the evaluation formally ends, maybe we could grab dinner. Real dinner, not mess hall. Talk about things, about where we go from here. Cole's throat tightened with emotion. I'd like that very much. Good. And Dad, I'm proud of you. Not just for today, for all of it. For staying with your crew in the minefield. For trusting Dr. Volkov. For being willing to change. That takes more courage than most people understand. After they hung up, Cole sat in his hotel room and let himself cry. Not from sadness, from relief. From the release of carrying weight for too long. The journey wasn't over. There would be more tests, more challenges. The Barys would enter service and face real combat and prove itself again or fail. His relationship with Jake would require work, patience, forgiveness from both sides. His relationship with Elena was undefined, uncertain, new. His PTSD wasn't cured. The pain in his back hadn't disappeared. The ghosts of Sergeant Ramos and all the others still haunted him. But for the first time in 15 years, Cole Mitchell felt like he was moving forward instead of running away. And that was enough. The California desert in late May carried a particular kind of heat that felt less like weather and more like divine judgment. Cole Mitchell stood in the shadow of the Fort Irwin headquarters building, watching the final preparations for Operation Snow Leopard with the detachment of a man who had learned to trust his crew. 2 weeks had passed since the Pentagon presentation, 2 weeks of final calibrations, crew integration training, and the slow transformation of the Barys from experimental platform to operational system. 3rd Brigade Combat Team would receive the first production vehicles in 6 months. But before that happened, one last evaluation remained. The big one, 72 hours, full spectrum operations, no safety nets. The kind of test that either validated everything or exposed fatal flaws that data and controlled environments couldn't reveal. Colonel Hendricks emerged from the building, his expression carrying the weight of command decisions. Weather forecast is ugly, Cole. Heat advisory through the weekend, 120 degrees predicted for Saturday. Storm system moving in Sunday evening with potential flash flooding. Some of my staff are recommending postponement. Cole considered this, his mind running through scenarios and contingencies. Real combat doesn't wait for good weather. If the Barys can't handle extreme conditions, We need to know now, not after it's fielded. That's what I told him, but I'm asking you directly, your crew, your call. Do we proceed? The question was heavier than it sounded, because this wasn't just about the vehicle anymore. It was about Tess and Webb and Orozco, about Jake's infantry platoon, about Elena's 3 years of work, about legacy and redemption and the thin line between proving competence and proving recklessness. We proceed, but I want full medical support standing by. Extra water, backup vehicles within 15 minutes response time. We push hard, but we don't sacrifice people to prove points. Hendricks nodded, satisfied. Major General Hayes is flying in tomorrow to observe personally. This eval has garnered attention at levels neither of us expected. The future of foreign defense partnerships is riding on how the Barys performs. No pressure. He walked away, leaving Cole with the familiar weight of responsibility. Elena found him 30 minutes later, reviewing final checklists in the operations center. She set down 2 bottles of water, the ritual of care that had become their language. You are worried, I can see it. 72 hours is a long time for things to go wrong, and they will go wrong, they always do. Yes, but we have prepared. The crew is ready, the vehicle is ready, you are ready. Cole looked at her, this woman who had become something more than colleague, more than friend, something he didn't yet have words for. Elena, if something happens out there, if I make a call that gets people hurt, she placed her hand over his, firm and sure. Then you will have made call based on best judgment and years of experience. That is all any commander can do. Cole, you have spent 15 years punishing yourself for Sergeant Ramos, but you cannot save him by saving everyone else. You can only do your best and trust that it is enough. The words cut through layers of scar tissue and reach something raw underneath. What if it's not enough? Then we fail honestly and learn from failure. But I do not think we will fail. I think we will show everyone what is possible when broken people refuse to stay broken. They sat together in the air-conditioned operations center while outside the desert baked, and the final pieces moved into position for the test that would define them all. Operation Snow Leopard launched at 0600 on Friday morning. The scenario was brutally simple. A coalition force needed to penetrate 120 miles into hostile territory to extract a downed aircrew. The Barys would lead a combined arms element, including Jake's infantry platoon, attack helicopter support, and opposition force elements played by some of Fort Irwin's most experienced soldiers. The twist was operational realism. No do-overs, no pauses. Whatever happened would play out in real time with real consequences measured in mission success or failure. Cole commanded from the Barys, Tess at his side coordinating infantry operations. Webb managed the AU-220M turret with the cold precision of a surgeon. Orozco drove with the confidence of someone who had learned to trust both her skills and her vehicle. The first 24 hours passed in a blur of movement and violence. They crossed terrain that would have stopped wheeled vehicles a generation ago. Rocky passes where the 8-wheel independent suspension proved its worth. Deep sand that swallowed lesser machines, but the Barys plowed through with methodical determination. Steep grades that tested engine power and transmission efficiency. The crew worked as a single organism, each member anticipating the others, communication reduced to essentials, trust built through repetition and shared hardship. At hour 18, deep in the training area's most remote sector, the opposition force sprung their first major ambush. It came at dusk when the light played tricks and exhaustion started to dull reflexes. The Barys rolled through what appeared to be empty desert when suddenly the world erupted. Simulated mortar fire walked across their position. Laser designators painted the vehicle from concealed positions 300 meters out. Smoke grenades created instant fog that reduced visibility to nothing. Cole's training took over. Muscle memory carved from decades of similar chaos. Contact 3 o'clock. Driver, hard left. Gunner suppressing fire sector 3. Orozco threw the Barys into a violent turn that would have rolled a top-heavy vehicle. The 8 wheels bit and held. Webb engaged targets with bursts of precision fire, the 57mm cannon speaking with authority. The infantry dismounted under fire, Jake leading his soldiers with the kind of calm that separated good leaders from great ones. They established a support by fire position while the Barys maneuvered to flank the ambush. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. When the smoke cleared and exercise controllers assessed the outcome, the Barys element had successfully defeated a force twice its size while taking minimal simulated casualties. Major General Hayes, monitoring from the Tactical Operations Center, keyed his radio. Mitchell, that was textbook combined arms. Your crew in that vehicle just did what a full company would struggle with. Impressive. Cole acknowledged, but his focus stayed tactical, because he knew this was just the opening move. The real tests were still coming. Night operations brought different challenges. The thermal optics that gave the Barys its edge in darkness also revealed how exposed they were in terrain with no cover. They navigated by starlight and satellite, moving toward the simulated downed aircrew location, avoiding enemy patrols that had their own night vision capabilities. At hour 30, they stopped for a tactical pause. 4 hours of rest and rotation, vehicle maintenance, crew reset. Cole walked the perimeter while others slept, his mind unable to fully shut down. Jake appeared beside him, having left his soldiers under the supervision of his platoon sergeant. Can't sleep either? Too wired. Your platoon did good work today. That ambush could have gone bad fast. We trained for bad. You taught me that, actually. When I was a kid and you were still talking to me about army stuff, you said combat is controlled chaos, and the side that controls better usually wins. Cole smiled slightly at the memory. You were 10. I was probably boring you to death with war stories. No, I was listening, even when I pretended not to. Even when I was angry that you were never home, I was still listening. They stood in the desert darkness, father and son, finally beginning to bridge the canyon years had carved between them. Jake continued, his voice quieter now. I understand it better now. Why you kept going back. Why the mission always seemed to matter more. It's not that you didn't love us. It's that you loved your soldiers too. And you couldn't figure out how to love both at the same time. I should have tried harder. Should have found balance. Yeah, you should have. But Dad, I'm starting to understand that some men aren't built for balance. They're built for mission. And maybe that's okay as long as they're honest about it. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. Some knot of guilt that had been tied so long he'd forgotten it was there. I'm proud of you, Jake. The leader you've become. The man you are. That happened despite me, not because of me, but I'm proud anyway. Some of it happened because of you. The good parts. The parts about never quitting, about taking care of your people, about leading from the front. I got those from you. They embraced then a brief collision of armor and gear and years of unspoken apology. When they separated, both men's eyes were wet. Get some sleep, son. Tomorrow's going to be harder. You too, old man. Jake walked back to his soldiers, and Cole felt lighter than he had in years. Saturday brought the heat. By 0900, the temperature had climbed past 110 degrees. By noon, it touched 122. The kind of heat that made breathing feel like inhaling fire, that turned metal surfaces into griddles, that tested every system and every person beyond normal limits. The Barys crew compartment held at 81 degrees, uncomfortable but survivable. The new cooling system worked as designed, pulling heat from the crew space and dissipating it through the upgraded radiators and evaporative backup systems. But heat affected more than temperature. It degraded electronic components. It stressed mechanical systems. It turned human beings into exhausted shadows of themselves. At hour 48, deep into the second day, they reached the objective. The simulated downed aircrew was located in a box canyon, surrounded by enemy forces with limited egress routes and no room for error. Cole studied the terrain through the Barry sensor suite, his tactical mind analyzing options. It's a kill box. They want us to charge in, expose ourselves, take casualties. Tess monitoring multiple radio nets, not at agreement. Classic L-shaped ambush setup. They've got the high ground and interlocking fields of fire, so we don't give them what they expect. Webb, can you reach that ridgeline with indirect fire? Use the cannon as a mortar. Webb ran calculations through the fire control computer. Affirmative, sir. 60-degree elevation. 3 rounds should suppress or eliminate the positions. Do it. Infantry, prepare for rapid insertion once we suppress the ridge. Helos on standby for extraction. The plan unfolded with the precision of experienced professionals executing complex choreography. Webb's rounds arced high and came down like the fist of God. The opposition force positions erupted in pyrotechnic simulation of destruction. Jake's platoon moved fast, entering the canyon while the enemy was still reacting. They secured the downed aircrew, loaded them onto the Barys, and extracted under covering fire from the attack helicopters. Total time from initiation to successful extraction, 18 minutes. Hayes' voice came over command net, carrying something like awe. Mitchell, that was brilliant. You just demonstrated capability that our current systems can't match. Documented, recorded, and frankly stunning. But Cole barely heard because at hour 50, as they moved to the final checkpoint, the day decided to test them one more time. The sandstorm came from nowhere, a wall of brown chaos that turned day into twilight in seconds. Wind hit the Barys like a living thing, 60 miles per hour of desert fury carrying enough particulate to scour paint from steel. Visibility dropped to zero. Navigation became guesswork. The storm was early, unexpected, and potentially lethal. Cole made the decision instantly. All elements, halt in place, button up, we ride it out. The infantry scrambled into the Barys crew compartment, 11 people plus the downed aircrew actors in a space designed for that exact load. Hatches sealed. The world outside became a roaring beast trying to get in. Inside, the crew and infantry packed together, breathing recycled air, listening to sand hammer against armor plate. Orozco monitored systems, her hands steady despite obvious stress. Sir, GPS is degraded but functional. We know where we are. Storm's moving east about 20 miles per hour. Should pass in 90 minutes. Copy. Everyone hydrate. Conserve power. We wait. Jake, pressed against the bulkhead next to his father, spoke over the roar. This is not how I expected this to go. Combat never is. You plan, you prepare, and then chaos happens. What matters is how you adapt. The storm raged for 2 hours. 2 hours of being trapped in a steel box with nothing to do but think and trust the vehicle protecting them. 2 hours where the winterized sealing systems that Elena's team had designed proved their worth by keeping the interior breathable while the outside world tried to suffocate them. When the storm finally passed and they emerged, the Barys was buried halfway up its wheels in fresh drifted sand. The 8-wheel drive clawed for purchase, found it, and pulled them free. They rolled toward the final checkpoint, battered but intact, the crew exhausted but functional. At hour 68, with 4 hours remaining in the evaluation, they reached friendly lines. Mission complete. Aircrew extracted. 0 simulated casualties. Vehicle operational despite extreme conditions and sustained stress. Major General Hayes met them personally at the final checkpoint. He walked around the Barys, examining the sand-scored armor, the stress-marked systems, the vehicle that had taken everything Operation Snow Leopard could throw at it and delivered its crew home intact. Captain Mitchell, Dr. Volkov, I want to make a statement for the record. He gestured to the assembled observers, the congressional liaisons, the acquisition officials, the media representatives who had been invited to witness the final evaluation. I came to this program skeptical. I've seen too many foreign systems fail to meet American standards. Too many partnerships collapse under operational pressure. But what I witnessed over the past 3 days changes my assessment completely. He placed his hand on the Barys hull. This vehicle does what we've been trying to achieve for 20 years. It provides genuine protection, real mobility, and exceptional crew survivability in a package that can be rapidly deployed anywhere in the world. The crew commanded by Captain Mitchell demonstrated tactical excellence that exceeded my expectations. Hayes turned to face Cole directly. Captain, I understand your medical board is pending final decision. I'm recommending your retention not for 2 years but for 4. We need experienced officers like you to train the next generation of commanders who will operate systems like the Barys. Your knowledge is too valuable to lose. Cole felt the wands ran with complicated weight. 4 more years. 4 years he'd never expected to have. 4 years that represented validation and burden in equal measure. Thank you, sir. I'll consider that carefully. You do that. Dr. Volkov, on behalf of the United States Army, thank you. Your team has built something remarkable. We'll be in touch about expanded procurement and potential technology sharing agreements. Elena, covered in dust and exhaustion but radiant with vindication, simply nodded. It is honor, General. Thank you for giving us fair evaluation. The debrief lasted 6 hours. Every system was analyzed. Every engagement was reviewed. The data painted a picture of consistent excellence under conditions that would have defeated lesser platforms. The final statistics were undeniable. The Barys had operated for 72 hours with only routine maintenance. It had engaged and defeated multiple enemy elements. It had protected its crew through extreme heat, simulated mine strikes, a major sandstorm, and the kind of sustained stress that revealed design flaws. And it had performed flawlessly. That evening, after the officials had departed and the formal evaluations were complete, the core team gathered at the same Barstow restaurant where they'd celebrated weeks earlier. But this time felt different. Not celebration of survival, but acknowledgement of completion. Tess raised her glass first. To Captain Mitchell for teaching us that old dogs can learn new tricks when they're willing to trust. Webb followed. To Dr. Volkov for building a vehicle that actually does what engineers claim vehicles will do. Orozco, never one to be left out. To the crew for being crazy enough to ride a snow leopard through hell and back. Jake, standing with his platoon in the back of the bar, raised his beer toward his father. To family, the one you're born into and the one you choose. Both matter. Cole felt emotion rise, the kind that came from being seen and accepted by people who mattered. He stood, glass in hand, searching for words adequate to the moment. I came to Fort Irwin broken, body and mind and spirit. I thought this evaluation would be my last mission, my final chance to prove I still had something to offer. But you all taught me something more important than vehicle specifications or tactical procedures. He paused, looking at each face in turn. You taught me that broken isn't the same as finished, that adaptation is strength, that trusting people is more important than trusting systems. And that family, whether blood or chosen, is what we fight for when everything else falls away. His eyes found Elena across the room. Thank you, all of you, for giving me the chance to be better than I was. The bar erupted in the kind of noise that came from soldiers who had shared something meaningful and knew it. Later, much later, after the crew had dispersed and the noise had faded, Cole and Elena walked through the desert night one last time. The stars above were the same stars that had witnessed Sergeant Ramos dying, that had seen Cole's marriage collapse, that had watched him lose his way. But somehow, under those same stars, he had found something new. Elena spoke first, her voice carrying across the quiet. What will you do about the 4 years General Hayes offered? I don't know. Part of me wants it, wants to train young commanders, to pass on what I've learned. But part of me thinks maybe it's time to finally stop, to choose something other than the mission. What would you choose? Cole stopped walking, turned to face her. You, if you'll have me, and Jake, a chance to be a father, not just to my son, but to your daughter, to build something that doesn't require armor plate in gun systems. Elena's eyes reflected starlight and something deeper. Cole Mitchell, that is most romantic thing anyone has said to me since Ryan. But I must be honest, I am not easy woman to love. I am stubborn. I am committed to my work. I will return to Kazakhstan for months at a time to oversee production. I have child who struggles with loss and change. And I'm a broken tanker with PTSD and chronic pain and decades of emotional unavailability to overcome. We're both disaster cases, Elena, but maybe that's the point. Maybe we understand each other's damage in ways whole people couldn't. She stepped closer, placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Then we try. Not with promises of perfection, but with commitment to show up, to choose each other even when it is difficult, to build something real from our broken pieces. They kissed then under the desert stars, two damaged souls finding unexpected grace in proximity. The next morning brought administrative duties and final paperwork. Cole submitted his decision to Hayes. He would accept retention, but only for 2 years, not 4. Enough time to establish the Barys training pipeline, to mentor the first generation of commanders, to transition his knowledge before final retirement. A compromise, balance, the thing he'd never managed before. Hendricks approved the plan with visible satisfaction. 2 years, Cole, then you're done, really done. And you know what you'll do then? Help Elena with the international program. Civilian consultant. Maybe teach at the armor school. Spend time with Jake. Figure out how to be a grandfather if he ever gives me grandkids. Normal things. Normal. After 30 years, you think you can do normal? Probably not, but I'm willing to try. 6 months later, Fort Benning, Georgia. The armor school had been home to American tankers since the Second World War. Its ranges and classrooms and maintenance bays had trained generations of soldiers in the art of mobile warfare. Now it hosted something new, the Barys Tank Commander Course. 8 weeks of intensive training for officers and senior NCOs selected to lead the first operational units equipped with the 8-wheeled AFV. Cole Mitchell stood in classroom 4 wearing civilian clothes and an instructor badge, facing 30 students who represented the future of American armor. Jake sat in the front row, having successfully competed for one of the coveted slots. His presence was both comforting and surreal. Cole began the course the way he began everything now, with honesty. My name is Cole Mitchell. I'm a civilian contractor, but I spent 28 years in armor. I commanded Abrams tanks in Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. I evaluated the Barys 8x8 and recommended its adoption, and I'm here to teach you how to command this vehicle effectively. He clicked to the first slide, showing the Barys in its desert camouflage. Some of you are probably wondering why the Army is buying a wheeled AFV when we have the best tanks in the world. Fair question. The answer is that modern warfare requires flexibility. The Barys isn't replacing the Abrams. It's filling roles where heavy armor is overkill or unavailable. Rapid deployment, urban operations, coalition partnerships, missions where mobility and crew protection matter more than heavy firepower. A hand raised, a young captain with Ranger tab and combat patch. Sir, with respect, how do we trust a vehicle that isn't American designed? How do we know it won't fail when we need it most? Cole smiled, recognizing his own skepticism from months earlier. Captain, that's the right question, and here's my answer. I didn't trust it either. I spent 3 decades believing American armor was the only armor worth trusting. Then I tested the Barys under conditions that would have destroyed lesser vehicles. I rode it through mine strikes and sandstorms and heat that shut down our existing systems. He paused, making eye contact with the questioner. Trust isn't about where something was built. It's about whether it does what it claims to do. The Barys protected my crew when we were vulnerable. It brought everyone home. That's the only metric that matters. And over the next 8 weeks, you'll learn its capabilities and limitations. Then you'll decide for yourself whether it's worthy of trust. The course proceeded over weeks that blended technical instruction with practical exercises. Cole taught them about the 8-wheel drive system, about the AU-220M turret, about crew coordination and tactical employment. But more than that, he taught them what he'd learned, about adaptation, about being willing to change, about trusting your crew and your equipment, even when fear said not to. Elena visited twice, bringing Anya with her. The 9-year-old was fascinated by the training vehicles, asking questions that made Cole think about armor in ways he never had. Mr. Cole, why do tanks need to be scary looking? Why can't they be pretty? He knelt to her level, taking the question seriously. Because tanks need to protect soldiers, and sometimes protection means being strong and tough. But Anya, you know what? The Barys your mama designed is kind of pretty. In its own way, it's sleek and smart, not just big and heavy. Anya considered this, then nodded with the certainty of children. I think you're right. It's pretty like a snow leopard, strong but also beautiful. Elena watched the exchange with visible emotion. Later, when Anya was occupied with other children, she pulled Cole aside. She likes you, asks about you when you are not here, calls you her American soldier. I like her too. She is smart and curious and reminds me of Jake at that age, before I screwed everything up. You are not screwing up now. With her, with me, with Jake, you are present. That is gift, Cole. Presence. The weeks passed. The student has graduated. Jake received honors as top of class, his tactical acumen and leadership standing out even among exceptional peers. At the graduation ceremony, Cole pinned Jake's tank commander badge himself, the ritual carrying weight beyond protocol. Proud of you, son. Couldn't have done it without your teaching, Dad, both the formal instruction and the life lessons. What life lessons? That it's never too late to change. That admitting you were wrong takes more courage than pretending you were right. That loving people means showing up even when it's hard. They embraced in front of the assembled students and instructors, father and son, both wearing the armor of vulnerability instead of steel. Cole's 2-year contract progressed. He trained 6 more classes. Watched the first Barys units deploy to Europe and as part of NATO rotations. Received reports of vehicle performance that validated everything the evaluation had shown. He also worked with Elena on international partnerships, helping other nations evaluate the Barys for their requirements. They traveled together to Kazakhstan and South Africa and Poland, building a life that spanned continents but always came back to each other. His PTSD didn't disappear. The nightmares about Sergeant Ramos still came, though less frequently. The pain in his back remained a constant companion. But he had tools now, therapy that he actually attended, medication that helped, and people who understood when he needed space or support. Jake deployed with his Barys-equipped platoon to Eastern Europe. The letters he sent spoke of the vehicle's performance with respect bordering on affection. He'd found his own path in armor, different from his father's but no less valid. On Cole's final day as an instructor, 2 years to the day after Operation Snow Leopard, he stood one last time in front of a classroom full of future commanders. This is my last class. After today, I'm officially retired, really retired. So I want to leave you with something beyond vehicle specifications and tactical procedures. He paused, gathering thoughts shaped by 3 decades in hard-won wisdom. I spent most of my career believing that armor was about steel and firepower, that the thickest armor and biggest gun won battles. But I was wrong. Armor is about the people inside, about crews who trust each other and commanders who trust their crews, about being willing to adapt when circumstances demand it. Another pause, longer this time. The Barys 8x8 is a good vehicle, but it's just machinery. What makes it exceptional is the men and women who command it, who maintain it, who trust it to bring them home. Your job isn't to drive a vehicle, it's to lead soldiers, to make decisions that keep them alive, to bring everyone home even when circumstances say you can't. He looked at the faces watching him, young and serious and ready. Some of you will face combat, real combat, not exercises. When that happens, remember this. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's functioning despite fear. It's staying with your crew when every instinct says run. It's trusting your training and your equipment, and most of all, your people. His voice roughened with emotion. I lost soldiers in my career, men I cared about, men I failed to bring home. That weight never leaves, but I learned that the way to honor their sacrifice isn't to be perfect. It's to be present, to show up, to do better than I did, and that's what I'm asking from you. Be present for your crews. Lead them honestly. Bring them home. The class stood as one, applauding with the kind of respect earned through authenticity. After they filed out, Cole stood alone in the empty classroom, feeling the weight of 3 decades lifting. He'd given what he could, passed on what he'd learned, left a legacy built not on perfection, but on honest effort and hard-won growth. Elena found him there, Anya holding her hand. Ready, Cole? We have flight to catch. Where to this time? Kazakhstan, then California, then maybe nowhere for a while. I think we all deserve rest. Anya tugged his hand. Mr. Cole, when we get home, will you teach me to drive? Mama says I'm too young, but you're a soldier, so maybe you'll say yes. He laughed, genuinely, the sound surprising him with its ease. How about we start with learning to change a tire? Work our way up to driving when you're, say, 16? Deal. They walked out together, an unlikely family forged from loss and reconstruction. Behind them, the classroom stood empty, ready for the next instructor, the next class. The perpetual cycle of knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Cole Mitchell's war was over, not ended with fanfare or final battle, but with the quiet understanding that he had given enough, learned enough, grown enough to finally stand down. The armor he wore now wasn't steel. It was softer, more vulnerable, infinitely more valuable. The armor of connection, of family, of choosing presence over perfection. 3 months later, a video call brought unexpected news. Jake's face filled the screen, grinning with barely contained excitement. Dad, Elena, I've got news, big news. Cole felt his heart rate pick up. Combat notification, injury, deployment change. What is it, son? Sarah and I are expecting. You're going to be a grandfather. Due date is February. The words took a moment to process, then emotion hit like a breaching charge. Elena squealed with delight. Anya jumped up and down. Cole just sat, tears streaming down his weathered face. A grandfather? Me, Jake, I don't know what to say. Say you'll be there. Say you'll teach my kid about tanks and honor and showing up even when it's hard. Say you'll be the grandfather you didn't get to be a father. I'll be there, I promise. Every birthday, every milestone, every moment I can. That's all I needed to hear. After the call ended, Cole sat with Elena on their porch in the California house they'd bought together. The desert stretched before them, eternal and indifferent. You are thinking about Sergeant Ramos, Elena said quietly. How did you know? Because I know you, and because I think about Ryan at moments like this, wishing they could see what came after, what their sacrifice made possible. Cole nodded slowly. Ramos was 24, never met his twin girls. I've spent 15 years carrying guilt about that. But Jake's child, my grandchild, will know me. We'll hear stories about armor and service and the importance of showing up. And maybe that's how I honor Ramos. Not by saving everyone, but by being present for the people I can still reach. That is wise, Cole. Took you a long time to learn, but you learned. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over land that had tested them and transformed them. Cole thought about the journey, about broken vehicles and broken people, about Barys and snow leopards and adaptation, about Jake and Elena and Anya and the family he'd found after losing the one he'd taken for granted. He thought about the young commanders he'd trained, who would carry forward lessons paid for in blood and sweat and honest reckoning with failure. He thought about the armor, steel and human, that protected what mattered most. And he thought about the last command he would ever give, the one that mattered more than any tactical order, any mission brief, any evaluation protocol. Be present, show up, choose connection over comfort. Trust that broken pieces can be rebuilt into something stronger than the original. Never give up on the possibility of redemption. The sun disappeared below the horizon, the desert cooled, stars emerged one by one, the same stars that had witnessed everything. Cole Mitchell, veteran of 30 years in 3 wars, father and soon-to-be grandfather, reached for Elena's hand and held on. The mission was complete. The real work of living could finally begin. End of part 3. Epilogue. 2 years later, Fort Irwin Motor Pool. Cole stood beside a Barys 8x8 painted in the desert camouflage of 3rd Brigade Combat Team. His grandson, 14 months old, sat on his shoulders, tiny hands gripping gray hair, babbling with the unself-conscious joy of toddlers. Jake commanded the vehicle now, a platoon leader with combat experience and the kind of confidence that came from competence earned through trial. "Dad, you want to show little Cole the inside?" He climbed into the crew compartment, his grandson wide-eyed at the screens and controls and the particular smell of military vehicles everywhere. "This is what Grandpa did, buddy. Commanded tanks, protected soldiers, tried to bring everyone home." The child didn't understand the words but responded to the emotion behind them. He patted Cole's weathered face with pudgy hands and smiled. Jake watched from below, Sarah beside him, their family complete. Elena appeared with Anya, now 11 and already showing signs of her mother's engineering brilliance. "Are we ready?" Long drive back to California. Cole climbed down, handed his grandson to Sarah, and took one last look at the Barys. The vehicle sat silent, its mission complete for the day, ready for the next. Crews would come and go. Commanders would lead it into situations unknown. It would protect them or fail them based on countless variables beyond anyone's control. But it would endure, adapt, serve. Just like the soldiers who crewed it. Just like the broken man who had learned to trust it. Cole Mitchell walked away from the motor pool for the last time, surrounded by family both blood and chosen, carrying scars that would never fully heal, but no longer defined him. The snow leopard would prowl without him now, and that was exactly how it should be. The legacy wasn't the vehicle. It was the people. It always had been. And